Good morning, 5th grade.
Good morning, Mrs. Green.
Well, I'm here today to talk to you about the Iowa Children's Choice Awards. This award was started way back in 1978 by the Iowa Association of School Librarians. Now, their purpose was to get kids like you to read more books and also to recognize outstanding American authors. Now, this award is rather unique in that it's for Iowa kids in grades 3 through 6. And the book is for you guys and it's by you guys. All of these books have been nominated by kids across the state just like you. So this year, as you're reading books, you think, I think other Iowa kids would enjoy reading this book too. Tell Mr. Dyer and he'll see about getting the book nominated for next year. Now, if you have read at least 2 books, remember 2 books, by the end of March, you will be able to vote. And once again, it's only Iowa kids in grades 3 through 6 who can vote. And then, when all the votes are counted across the state, we'll announce the favorite book of the Iowa kids. Probably, it's usually in April or May that we find this out. So, I have been doing these book talks now. This is my 15th year of doing book talks. And over the years, I have found that there are certain themes that keep coming up. One year, there were a bunch of books about bullies. One year, there were a bunch of books about pets. This year, as I was reading, this Beatles song kept going through my head. And maybe you've heard it. You get by with a little help from your friends. It seemed like this year there are a lot of books where friends are very important to the plot. So keep listening for that as we're talking today. Now, I would love to stop and talk and have interact with you, but I got to get through 20 books this morning. But I do like feedback from you. So if I ask you a question and you agree, give me a fist nod. If you disagree, a fist shake. If you have a connection with a book, and I've seen this several times already, you know the connection sign. Just show me the connection with a book, and I'll see it. Also, sometimes I'll ask you to help me with the book talk, and I'll put my palm out like this, and I want you to say, read the book to find out. So let's practice.
Read the book to find out.
Okay, and actually, you know, I'd like you to read all the books. Now, let's take a look at your bookmark that you received. If you haven't done so already, would you flip it over and write your name and homeroom 5H on the back? And as I'm talking, if you have already read the book, you can put a little check next to it. If this is a book that you would really like to read, put a little star next to it. And if it's a book you just can't wait to read, draw a circle around it. Then you can take this bookmark to the library and they'll give you help with your selection. Okay, I'm going to start at the top of the list and I'm going to work my way down. The books are arranged in alphabetical order by the author this time. So, here we go. Witch Tree is a rather unique book, and in that it is told from the point of view of a 216-year-old red oak tree. Now, Red, as he's known to his friends, is kind of a celebrity around town. Every May 1st, the people of the town write their wishes on scraps of material, and then they tie the fabric to Red's branches. Now, not only is Red the keeper of wishes, he's also home to a bunch of critters, like raccoons and possums and owls, and Red's best friend Bongo is a crow who has her nest at the top of the tree. Now, one day, Samar and her family move in to the house near Red, and right away the critters realize there's something special about Samar. And when she comes out and sits under Red's branches, They gather round her, and some of them even let her pet them. But unfortunately, not everybody in the neighborhood is as welcoming. And soon Samar has her own wish tied to the branches. I wish I had a friend. And Red decides he's going to do everything in his power, with the help of his friends, to make that wish come true. But now, there's a time crunch. Because Francesca, the lady who owns the tree, has decided she's going to chop down the Red. Well, his roots are buckling the sidewalk, and the roots are getting into the underground pipes and plumbing. Yeah, it's time to have him go. Oh, can anything be done to save this beloved tree? Well, you will not believe what happens when you read Wish Tree. A Boy Named Bat is a story about a kid who wants a pet. And not just any pet, he wants a skunk for a pet. Now I need to tell you a little bit about Bat. He was what we might call a special needs child. Loud noises bother him. He wants things in a predictable order, and he needs to have a predictable schedule. And when things don't go his way, he starts flapping his arms like wings of a bat. And as you can imagine, the kids at school make fun of him, and he doesn't have any friends. And you wonder, why would he want a skunk? Well, here's the story. Bat's mom is a veterinarian. And she one day brings home a baby kit or skunk. And the mama skunk has been killed by a car. And Mom says, we need to take care of this skunk until it's big enough that it can go to the animal rescue shelter. And Bat immediately volunteers for the job. But Mom warns him, as soon as the kit is big enough, it's going to go to the animal shelter. Well, Bat has different plans than that. But we start to realize being a keeper of a skunk might just be what Bat needs to work on his social skills and the other issues that he has, and maybe, just maybe, he can get a friend out of it. Do I have any baseball fans in here? Perfect time of year with the World Series just starting. SOAR is about Jeremiah, who loves baseball. He knows all about the game. He knows the plays and the players and the statistics and the strategies and the teams. He just knows it all. But unfortunately, because he had heart surgery when he was young, the doctors won't actually allow him to play the game. Jeremiah finds that they're going to be moving to a place called Hillcrest, Ohio. And he Googles the place and he finds out that this is a real baseball town. The high school team has won the state championship 6 times. And it's clinched national titles twice. Oh, he tells his dad excitedly, we're going to gorge ourselves on baseball. But unfortunately, soon after they move, tragedy strikes. The star pitcher of the high school team drops over dead. And the coach is soon involved in a scandal that will rock the town to its very core. The high school team is disbanded, and the parents don't even want their kids thinking about playing baseball. But there's a handful of kids at Jeremiah's middle school that just can't give up the game. And when they find out about Jeremiah's knowledge of baseball, they ask him to be their coach, and he happily agrees. And we soon realize that Jeremiah's can-do, don't-give-up attitude might just be what his team needs, and in fact the whole town, to bring him back into the game so that they can soar like eagles once again. Rip and Red have been best friends forever. And they can't wait for the beginning of 5th grade. But when they get to school that first day, they find out that it's going to be a whole new ball game. The teacher that they thought they were going to have retired. And now they have Mr. Acevedo. And this is him on the front cover. Now Mr. Acevedo doesn't look like the normal teacher according to the boys. He's got his hair pulled back into a ponytail. He wears an earring. And he's got tattoos all over the place. And he has different teaching methods too. He doesn't believe in giving any homework. He doesn't believe in giving any tests. And when he started a writing assignment, he has the kids stand on top of their desk like they are on the cover, so they can get a new perspective. When they go to the gym for after-school sports, there's Mr. Acevedo again. The coach that they've had before, he isn't there anymore. I got to tell you a little bit about Red. Just like Bat, he has some special needs. Loud noises bother him. Just like Bat, he needs things predictable. And all these changes are really freaking him out. But unlike Bat, Red has Rip, the best friend ever. And he helps him deal with his special issues, which is a good thing, because you know how great it is to have a friend when life throws you a curve and it's a whole new ball game. The wild robot begins in the middle of the ocean. There's a cargo ship carrying 500 crates of robots, and it's hit by a hurricane. Almost everything is lost at sea, except one crate survives, and it floats to the shore of a deserted island. Now there's some curious otters who just happen to push the right button, and the robot is activated. Hello, I am Rosum, Unit 7134, but you can call me Roz. Well, the otters scamper off in fear, and pretty soon all the animals know there is a monster on the island. Poor Roz. She doesn't know where she is or how she got there, but she doesn't think she's a monster. Well, she starts to observe the critters from afar, and pretty soon she can imitate the way they move, the sounds they make, and before long, Roz and the animals are communicating. And you know how it is. Once you can communicate, you can start to become friends. And Roz and the animals realize that they can help each other with the daily task at hand, and it would be very beneficial. Roz even goes as far as adopting a baby orphan goose that she calls Brightbeak. And then Roz's mysterious past comes back to haunt her. And she needs help from her new friends. And you won't believe what they do to help her out. But spoiler alert, some of it involves poop. I think you're going to enjoy getting to know the wild robot. Walking with Miss Millie is set in Georgia in 1968. That was back when I was a little girl. And Alice's mom has decided to move the family to Rainbow, Georgia, which is her hometown. Grandma still lives there, and she needs some help because Grandma has what Alice calls the forgetting disease. Now Alice decides she's not going to bother to get acquainted with people or make any friends because they're not going to be here that long, right? But then she meets Miss Millie, Grandma's next door neighbor. Miss Millie is 92 years old, and she needs help walking her blind dog, Clarence, and Alice agrees to help. And on their walks, Alice learns about Miss Millie's life. And she finds out what it was like to be a black woman in the Deep South in the early 1900s. Alice also learns about herself and what it takes to be a friend, which is a good thing. because it looks like they're going to be in Georgia longer than they thought. Looks like Grandma needs more help than they thought. And so it's a good thing she's been walking with Miss Millie. And I like to read to you what it says on the front here on the cover. Have you ever seen the world through someone else's eyes? A good thing to keep in mind. Now, I don't want you to actually do this because this is just the title of the book, which is All Rise for the Honorable Perry T. Cook. Perry's 11 years old and he has spent his entire life in jail, which is a good thing because that's where his mom is. She's a resident of Cell Block C. And thanks to a very understanding warden, Perry has his own room right next to the warden's office. He goes to regular school and he has jobs around the prison where he helps out. Now there's a new district attorney in town who comes and finds out about Perry's living conditions and says, "This cannot continue." And he ripped Perry out of the only home that he's ever known and takes him to live with him. Now the only good thing about it is that Mr. Van Leer, the district attorney, is also Perry's best friend Zoe's stepdad. So at least there's somebody he knows that he's going to be living with. Well, the bad news is that Perry's mom was getting ready to be released from prison, but now with all this hassle with Perry's living conditions, her parole hearing has been postponed indefinitely. And Perry goes to Mr. Van Leer and says, "Hey, could you look into this for me?" Yeah, I'll do that." Perry doesn't think Mr. Van Leer is going to do that at all. And then, as he's researching a school assignment, Perry learns some news that turns his world upside down. And he wonders, can this news help or hurt his mom's situation of getting out of jail soon? You're going to have to
Read the book to find out.
Oh, what would you do if you started to believe that your house is haunted? That's what Tessa has to decide in The Peculiar Incident on Shady Street. Tessa and her family have just moved from Florida up to Chicago, Illinois, and they haven't been in their new house very long when the peculiar incidents begin. The lights start flickering. There's strange noises coming from the walls. Objects move by themselves. And the scariest thing happens right in Tessa's own bedroom. Tessa is an artist, and she has a sketchbook, and one day she opens up the book, and there's a drawing in there that she didn't make. It's a picture of a girl in a box, and underneath the picture is the name Inez. Now Tessa and her new friends decide that the ghost of Inez Clark is haunting the house. Now Inez is a bit of a local legend around Chicago. The story goes that Inez was 6 years old when she was struck by lightning and killed. Now supposedly she's buried in a local cemetery, but there's some confusion about that. And there's been some strange incidents happening at the gravesite. So Tessa and her friends decide they're going to follow some clues to find out the answers to some questions. Why is Inez haunting Tessa's house? What does she want, and how can the kids help her? I think this would be the perfect book to read at this time of year to find out about the peculiar incident on Shady Street. Space Case is set on the moon at a moon colony about 20 years from now in the year 2040. Dash is so excited because his family has been chosen as one of the families that get to go and colonize the moon. There's a moon base up there, and the handbook from NASA says, this is going to be the adventure of a lifetime. And in fact, there are excerpts from that handbook at the beginning of each chapter. But Dash hasn't been up there very long before he gets very disillusioned with living on the moon. The food is terrible. The living conditions are very cramped. And don't even get Dash started talking about the toilets. And in fact, that's where the mystery begins. In the middle of the night, Dash is in one of the communal bathrooms, and he's got an upset stomach from something that he ate. And he hears Dr. Holtz come in, and it seems like Dr. Holtz is on the phone because Dash is only hearing one side of the conversation. And he learns that Dr. Holtz has made an amazing discovery that is going to change everything. And he's going to make the announcement tomorrow at breakfast. But in the morning, the announcement that they made is not anything that anyone expected. Because the discovery this morning is that Dr. Holtz's body is outside on the surface of the moon and he's dead. Well, all the adults on the moon base think, oh, this is just a terrible accident. But Dash knows better. He knows that it wasn't an accident, and he suspects foul play. And so he starts going through and looking for the clues to prove what really happened. And you will be amazed by what he finds out on Space Case. Moving target takes place in Italy. Cassie thinks, oh, they have a fairly normal life. She and her dad have lived all over the world. Yeah, that's true, and major cities. But her dad's an art history professor. That's just part of his job, right? Well, one day Dad shows up at school, and he's very worried. He says, we have to get out of here right now. And before he has a chance to tell Cassie what's happening, some scary-looking guys on motorcycles surround the car, and Dad gets shot. Somehow, Cassie gets him to the hospital, and as he's being whisked down the hall to surgery, he's able to rasp out, "Go to the monastery. Find Brother Gregorio. He'll tell you what's happening." Well, Cassie finds Brother Gregorio, and she cannot believe what he tells her. He says that she is one of the few people in the entire world that can control the spear of destiny. Now, the spear has been missing for some time now, but it has the ability to influence what happens in the future, either for good or for evil. And Cassie can control that. There's a secret organization called the Shady who's taken it on as their mission to protect the world from the spear of destiny. And if they can't have the spear itself, they're going to go after the people who can control it. And Cassie is on the list. Well, Cassie and her friends decide if they can actually find the spear, give it to the Shady, they'll leave Cassie alone, and she'll be able to find her father, who has mysteriously disappeared from the hospital. Cassie and her friends start following some very dangerous clues, and Cassie realizes that if she's going to survive, she's going to have to be a moving target. Do I have any football fans in here? All right, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. This would be the book for you because it's written by an NFL star, a football player by the name of Tim Green, and he has a story about Landon, who often feels left out. Landon was born deaf, And he has what are called implants by his ears that allow him to hear well enough that he is able to hear well enough that he's able to attend a regular school with his sister. Well, one day Mom tells the kids that they're moving to New York, and Landon thinks that's okay because that's going to get him away from the bullies who pick on him. The way that he talks and the way that he hears with his implants. Also, this is going to give him a chance to ask his mom and convince her to let him play football. Mom reluctantly agrees and says yes. And Landon just can't wait to be a part of a team. But it isn't exactly what he thought it would be. Just because he's a big kid doesn't automatically make him a football player. And he finds out that the practices are brutal, the coaches are strict, and nobody quite understands the special needs he has because of his hearing. But even if you're not a football fan, I think you would enjoy this book because it has some excellent life lessons. Through all of his struggles, Landon does not give up. He lives by the motto that's on the front of the cover. Unfortunately, Mrs. Bradley covered it up with the barcode, but underneath the barcode it has this motto: winners never quit and quitters never win. And I think that you can learn a lot from Landon, who vows never to be left out again. Lily and her dad live in West Virginia. Her mom lives with Lily's grandparents, and they travel all over the country because they own a circus. And the star of the show is one amazing elephant called Queenie Grace. Now, Grandpa Bill and Queenie Grace have this wonderful act, and they wow audiences whenever they give their performance. Everyone is devastated, including Queenie Grace, when Grandpa Bill suddenly drops over dead from a heart attack. Lily decides that she's going to go to the funeral in Florida, and she's eager to see her family again. But she's not anxious to see Queenie Grace at all. She's always been afraid of the elephant. She's so big. But Lily soon finds out that she is going to have to come to Queenie Grace's rescue. Now that Grandpa's dead, there's some mean men who want to do some nasty things to the elephant. And it's up to Lily to save her. While she's in Florida, Lily learns a couple things. She learns to overcome her fears. She learns about forgiveness. And she learns about love. All from one amazing elephant. Our next book, called The Mysterious Moonstone, is part of a series. It's the first book of a new series called The Key Hunters. The Key Hunters are Chloe and Evan, and they are kind of confused and upset when their favorite librarian, Miss Hilliard, stops coming to the library. It's just like she disappeared. But now they have that mean Ms. Crowley for their librarian. And Miss Crowley's been acting kind of weird lately. So one day the kids decide that they are going to follow her when she goes to the back room. Well, long story short, they find themselves in an underground library. It's fabulous down there. The only thing, all the books have locks on them, like those fancy diaries have. They don't find Miss Crowley down there, but they do find a book lying on a table, and next to it is a funny-looking key. They take the key, put it in the lock, turn it, and poof! All of a sudden, they are inside the book and a part of the story. And they find themselves wearing old-fashioned clothes. And they're now helping a young detective by the name of Artie, who is trying to discover who stole the Musgrove Moonstone. The Moonstone is a huge diamond that changes colors with the phases of the moon. They do find Miss Crowley in the story too, and she warns them that they have to stay in character and try to solve the mystery, and if they don't, they could be stuck inside the book forever. Stuck inside the book forever? Stuck inside a book forever? Is that what happened to Miss Hilliard? The mystery continues. Raise your hand if you have ever read a book where the main character gets bullied. Yep, there's a lot of them out there. Well, this restart is a little different because the main character is the bully. Chase and his friends take evil delight in picking on other kids at school. One case was so bad, they picked on the kid so much, his parents took him out of school and sent him to a boarding school out of state. And then Chase has a life-changing accident. He falls off the roof of his house. He hits his head so hard that he's knocked unconscious. And when he wakes up in the hospital, he has what they call amnesia. He doesn't remember anything that has happened before, and he doesn't recognize people. He doesn't even recognize his own mom. And when he goes back to school, he can't figure out, while people are acting afraid of him. They're scared of him. They're avoiding him. And he really doesn't know where he fits in anymore. Because of the concussion, he can't play football this year. So he doesn't feel comfortable hanging around with the football players anymore. And you know what? He doesn't really like how the football players are treating the other kids at school. One of his former victims, Brendan, invites him to join the video club. And he finds out he's a natural with a video camera. He comes up with all these creative ideas and projects. And you know what? He actually likes the kids in the club. And then, slowly, little by little, his memory starts coming back. And we start to wonder, as his memory returns, will the old Chase return too? Or has he actually had a restart in his life? The Bicycle Spy is a historical fiction. It's set in France during World War II in the 1940s. Marcel loves to ride his bicycle. And he goes out on the country roads around his French village. And he has dreams of one day riding in the Tour de France. That's a famous bicycle race that they have, and they still have it to this day. One day a new girl comes to his classroom. Her name is Delphine, and she likes riding her bike as much as he does. She also has an interest in the Tour de France, and she has a scrapbook with pictures of past winners. Well, of course, they become friends right away. Well, I have to give you a little bit of some historical information before I go any farther. During World War II, the German army invaded France, and the German soldiers were there in France, and as you can imagine, the French people didn't like it very much. So a group of them got together at a secret organization. It was called the French Resistance because the French people were resisting the German soldiers being there. Now, it's very dangerous to be part of this organization, and if you were caught, there would be dire, terrible consequences. Don't tell anybody, but Marcel and his family are part of the French resistance. And Mama has come up with a very clever way of passing messages from one resistance member to another. Marcel's family owns a bakery, and so Mama decides that she's going to write notes on pieces of paper, bake them in loaves of bread, and then Marcel will deliver them on his bicycle. Who's going to stop a kid delivering bread? Perfect. Well, one day they find out that Delphine's family is in very big danger. They have to get out of town right now. And Marcel thinks that the resistance can help. If only he could get a message to them. So he has to come up with a plan. But will he ever know if they get away safely? Are they okay? You're going to have to
Read the book to find out.
Okay, something that I need to share with you before we move on to the next book is that we have talked before about connections and the connection between text to world. Last month in our Telegraph Herald from Dubuque, there was an article about a woman who recalls the Nazi or German occupation of Paris, France. And she talks about living in France during the time that Marcel's story takes place. And on the second page of the article, she actually talks about how she helped out the French resistance, just like Marcel did. So I thought it was kind of interesting that the connection with text to world was right here in our own Dubuque paper. Raise your hand if you've read any of the Upside Down Magic books before. Any of you? Well, this one is number 3 in the series. It's called Showing Off. In Nori's world, kids just about your age get their magical powers. And then when they get to school, they're divided in home rooms depending on their magical talents. But then there's people like Nori who have upside down magic. They can't control their powers, and they are in a separate room all by themselves. Their magic is a little wonky. For example, when Nori tries to turn herself into a kitten, she also turns herself partly into a dragon. So she comes out like this, a Driton. Her friend Bax, he turns himself into a rock, and then he can't turn himself back again. And Elliot, anything he touches, turns to ice. Yeah, like I said, wonky. Well, everybody's all excited because there's going to be an all-school talent show called the Show Off, and each class is going to highlight their special talents. And the Upside Down Magic kids are worried because they can't control their powers. And now the pressure's on Nori because she just found out her dad is going to come to the show. Dad is the headmaster at another fancy schmancy private magic school. He doesn't believe in upside down magic, and he's very embarrassed that his own daughter has it. Can the upside down magic class find a skit that highlight and showcase their special talents and show it's okay to be different? And will Nori's dad ever be proud of her? You're going to have to
Read the book to find out.
In word of mouth, you're going to meet Isaiah, who's a very special mouse for several reasons. He is part of a laboratory group of mice, and one reason that he's special is that he's blue. Isaiah thinks that the scientists dyed all the mice a different color so he can tell them apart. 2, he could imitate some from sounds and voices of people, and that comes in handy when you're getting away from, trying to get away from cats. Isaiah can also read, which is important for various reasons. And using a keyboard, Isaiah can communicate with people. And his favorite person to communicate with is Haley. Haley is a girl who has some problems of her own with mean girls at school. And Isaiah and Haley soon become good friends. Well, the story starts out when Isaiah and his 96 brothers and sisters are trying to escape from the lab. And they're running away, and Isaiah's the littlest mouse, and he just can't keep up, which is a good thing because all the other 96 brothers and sisters get recaptured and taken back to the lab. But now Isaiah's out by himself, and he's a very timid little mouse. Luckily, he finds Michaela, and she's a wild mouse, and she invites him to come to live with her and her family. And the other mice soon realize the importance of having somebody with Isaiah's communication skills, and they invite him to become part of their family. And Isaiah is honored, but then that just makes him miss his 96 brothers and sisters even more. And then he thinks, I bet I can come up with an idea to rescue them from the horrible place, the lab. Can he do it? Will he be successful? You're going to have to
Read the book to find out.
The thing about leftovers is nobody really likes them. That's what Bizzy thinks. Bizzy's been trying to deal with her parents' divorce for some time now. At one time she thought that her folks might be able to get together, but doesn't look like that's going to happen. Dad's already remarried, and Mom and her boyfriend are planning a wedding. And both couples are planning on having more kids. Where does that leave Bizzy? A leftover. She doesn't feel comfortable in either of her parents' homes. The only place that she's happy is when she's in the kitchen. She loves to cook and bake and come up with new recipes with all the leftovers she finds in the refrigerator. She's so confident of her cooking skills, she's going to join or enter a contest, a cooking contest that's very, very prestigious. And she thinks if she can just win this contest, maybe she won't feel like such a leftover like she does now. And maybe she can reinvent herself just like she reinvents meals with the leftovers she finds in the fridge. Because you know the thing about leftovers. Have you ever heard the expression, life isn't fair? Okay, this really applies to our next main character, Maverick, who decides he's going to become the secret sheriff of 6th grade. And as sheriff, he is going to do good deeds and stick up for those who are getting picked on by bullies. Well, some of those acts of kindness backfire. Like the day that he was going to write happy birthday on his friend's locker, and he thought he had a dry erase marker, but he had a Sharpie permanent marker. Oops. And the time that he brought an air freshener in to make the classroom smell better, he didn't know his teacher was highly allergic, and she started breaking out in hives. Oops. As you can imagine, Maverick spends a lot of time in the principal's office. And you wonder, why does he keep doing this? What's in it for him? Well, Maverick has some major problems of his own. You see, he's the littlest kid in his class, and he gets picked on by the biggest bully a lot. And his mom can't seem to hold on to her job, so there's not a lot of extra money or even food at their house. Yeah, he's got problems of his own. So why does he keep doing it? What's in it for him? You're going to have to
Read the book to find out.
Finding perfect? Yeah, right. Molly's life is about as far from perfect as you can get. And it all started when her mom left. Mom decided that she would rather work in Toronto, Canada than stay in Massachusetts with her husband and 3 kids. And right soon after she left, the weird behavior started. Molly finds herself washing her hands all the time. And her collection of glass animals have to be exactly an inch apart. And I mean exactly an inch apart. And the weirdest thing is that there's a voice in her head that's always counting by 4s. Count with me. 4, 8, 12, 16, 20. How can she think with this voice going on all the time? And she starts to wonder, am I going crazy? Are other people noticing this too? Because people keep asking, Molly, are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. She hates lying to her friends. She is so not fine. And she thinks if only Mom would come back, then all this weirdness would stop. She comes up with an idea. She's going to win a poetry contest at school. And then her mom will have to come back for the banquet. And she'll see how much she misses us, and she'll stay. Do you think it's going to work? You're going to have to
Read the book to find out.
Okay, how many of you found at least one book you just can't wait to read? All right. Mrs. Sir, I think we've got a good goal here for this class. Okay, in March, we're going to vote, and you need to have read how many? At least 2 books by then. So, happy reading. Remember,
Read the book to find out.